Hi guys and welcome back to Macaroon. This video is the first one of a new series called DIY Dares, where you guys can dare me to try out all kinds of crazy DIY experiments. These can be any combination of materials or methods, so if you can think of any ideas, then just leave them down below and I'll test out the best ones. This first DIY dare was inspired by some viral Instagram clips where people inject ink into these sodium alginate water toys. That made me wonder what would happen if you tried injecting color into transparent squishies instead, so I just thought, why not do it and film it for everyone to see. It actually turned out pretty weird, so be sure to keep on watching all the way to the end to see what happened. Before we get started, this video is kindly sponsored by Tropicats, which is an adorable mobile game featuring tropical cats. As a new mom, I suddenly realized how unpredictable my free time is because Isabelle sometimes naps for 10 minutes and sometimes for 2 hours, so the only games I play these days are ones on my phone, which I can easily dip in and out of. Tropicats is perfect for this because it has these quick puzzle levels where you match up 3 of the same objects, followed by a long-term goal of rebuilding and decorating your island. My favorite part of the game is being able to collect coins directly inside the levels. This is so satisfying and lets you buy all kinds of items to decorate your island with. I find that this feature is like a calming creative outlet in between the puzzle stages. Tropicats has this lovely atmosphere which is just stimulating enough to help you relax, but without being overly difficult or time-consuming. It's completely free to download and play, so be sure to click the link below to try it out. The game actually came out last year, which makes it pretty new, so I would totally recommend it if you like these types of mobile games. And now let's move on to our first DIY dare. So in order to inject our squishies, we have to make them first using transparent hitohara gel. This is a 2-part resin that cures into a soft squishy texture, and I've made several videos on this before. The method is deceptively simple since you theoretically only have to mix equal amounts of both liquids together. But in reality, transparent hitohara gel is incredibly difficult to get right because it's very sensitive to mixing ratios or contaminants. I'm starting with the base resin, and this is always the one with the little mascot on the lid. I'm measuring out 10 grams of the base, followed by 12 grams of hardener. From experience, I find that you always have to add more hardener, but even so, this is not a guarantee that the squishy will set properly. I actually made 2 different batches, both of which contained more than 50% hardener. Next up, I'm going to use some silicone molds that I made for various DIYs in the past. If you want to see how these were created from scratch, then I've linked all the tutorials down below. Just pour the hitohara gel inside and leave it to set. If mixed correctly, then everything should cure within 24 hours. I checked back a few days later and my greatest fear came true since none of these have hardened despite adjusting the recipe. If it sticks to your finger like this, then the squishy won't hold its shape. This breaks my heart since it's such a waste of clear hitohara gel, which is one of the most expensive craft supplies that you can get. Hitohara gel does come with a packet of talcum powder which is designed to make your squishies less sticky. However, I can't use that here because it will spoil the transparency. I wasn't able to get any of the squishies out of the molds, so I had to scrap everything and start again. This time I made several more batches of resin using even more hardener. As an extra tip, even if there's just a tiny amount of leftover hitohara gel, use it to fill up any small molds that you have. You'd be surprised at how much liquid you can still get out of the cup, and you'll end up with some fun mini squishies to play with. I left these to cure, and the next day, everything looks a lot more promising. This koala is a tiny bit stickier than I would have liked, but I think it's going to hold its shape. The same applies for the octopus. The only fail here is this fat koala, which didn't set at all. I have no idea why this happened, but I think my stirring stick might have been contaminated with a tiny bit of water. But this one looks okay, so I hope it's going to come out of the mold. When demolding the squishy, you have to be very careful not to let it stick to itself. So take care when pulling it out of the mold so it doesn't accidentally bend too far and the two surfaces end up touching. I decided to do this over a table so the demolded parts can stick to another surface right away. To add facial features, I'm using craft glue mixed with black acrylic paint. Instead of a brush, I'm using an old eyeliner pen, which is thinner and easier to control. Just apply the paint onto the squishy using a dotting motion, and you can also use a toothpick to clean up any mistakes. I'm quite pleased with how this turned out, although it was a very long road just to get to this point of having a clear squishy. Now comes the actual experiment, which is to see what happens if we inject color inside. For the ink, I'm simply using water mixed with food coloring. Hito-Hada gel in liquid form is not compatible with water-based inks, so I'm curious to see whether it makes a difference after it's been cured. For the next part, we'll need some syringes and needles. I'm putting these together for the first time, so I have no idea if this is the right technique, and apologies to any medical people in case this part looks too cringy. Even though this is obviously food coloring mixed with water, I realized that it does look a bit like blood, so there's a trigger warning for the next part in case you don't like medical or blood-like imagery. And now for the moment of truth. The ink does slide out easily since Hito-Hada gel is a lot thicker than sodium alginate or gelatin. But after poking around for a bit, I realized it was possible to get more of the color to stay inside. This looks a bit creepy, but I have to say it was incredibly satisfying to do. I never knew that giving injections could be so much fun. As part of my pregnancy and after my C-section, I had to give myself a lot of injections, and that was definitely way less enjoyable than this. I realized that it's also possible to combine the colors. By angling the needle downwards, I can get more ink to stay inside the squishy, or in this case, it's more underneath. The colors eventually mix together, so this somehow almost feels like playing with slime, but in a less permanent form. The squishy doesn't seem to have been damaged by the needle or water-based inks, but I'll leave it alone for a few days to see if there's a difference. If you want to see an update, then please follow me on Instagram under my username Macaroon. I have a story highlight called DIY Updates where I put all the follow-ups to various videos. Now I'm going to try injecting the octopus squishy. This one turned out more interesting because it's actually possible to create a pocket of ink. Depending on how you position the needle, the ink might flow out right away or stay inside for quite some time. I managed to make 2 color pockets here, which was really satisfying. Of course, if you start squishing it, then it'll push the ink out faster. I love this weird aesthetic because it seems like the squishies are bleeding colors out of nothing. I've never seen anything similar in a DIY before, so this experiment was worth the time, despite several failed attempts and a lot of wasted Hitohara gel. If you can think of any more DIY dares, then be sure to leave them down below. These can be any unexpected combination of materials or processes. Through these experiments, we can find out a lot more about the chemistry and behavior of different craft supplies. I'm Joanna, thank you so much for watching, and now you can see some outtakes of Isabelle when I was trying to film the intro. Someone just woke up from her nap. Let's see what I see. Hi. Hi, Isabelle. Hair. You're so good when I was filming. Hi. You like being on camera, don't you? Maybe you should also be a YouTuber. You also want to be a YouTuber someday? Yeah. Yeah. It's your second video. Now you're 3 months old. Quite a bit bigger than the last one.